And let's open it up to Q&A. Yes? Go ahead. Someone will bring you a microphone in a moment. Gavin, do we have a handy mic? Sorry for the delay. Coming up. Yes, our panelists, by the way, on the Q&A session, Kevin Price from Hexagon, Alan Carr from Siemens Energy, and Vatsal Shah from Litmus are available as well for our Q&A, as well as our presenters being able to participate. Go ahead, thanks. Mike? Turning it on? Oh, go ahead.
So I had a question for Roger. So you mentioned that you don't have a work order system. The system that you guys use for notifications today, does it aggregate all of that so you can look back and say, hey, from a mechanical integrity perspective, am I improving year over year?
I can come there. So basically, for all the utilities, we used to have a work order system, for daily PMs and weekly PMs, we used to generate work orders through Oracle. So with this digitalization, now we are monitoring all the data points which we cover in the preventative maintenance task digitally, and the system is monitoring every 5 minutes. Earlier it's one day, in one day, one data point. Now we have 300 data points every day. So with that, we eliminate completely that work order management system for preventative maintenance for utilities. We don't need that, no need to go to equipment and take the readings and all the stuff. We eliminate it completely. There is no daily PMs, 0 daily PMs. There is no work orders for it. Why I'm saying this is even for work order, there is some administrative work involved. As I said, we have 30 different equipments in utilities. Even if you consider 5 minutes to generate a work order, close the work order, 5 minutes multiplied by 30, that much time you need for administrative work. So we are completely eliminating that.
Can you pass it to behind? Thanks.
This is also for Roger.
Roger, you're popular.
So you say that you've eliminated your work order system. That's amazing. Have you seen an improvement in performance of these motors that you've?
Yes.
So you have.
Yeah.
Can you explain why that you think there's an improvement when you've gone away from preventative maintenance and you're just doing just in time, that you're able to improve that?
Yeah. So basically, with preventative maintenance, we used to collect the data on papers and on work orders. There is no way we can share it. Only plant team knows, even if they want to trend it, they have to transform that into Excel or somewhere, right? So with this digitalization piece, as I mentioned, every day with preventative maintenance work order, we have only one data point. Now we have 300 data points every day. For example, any motor, right? What is the current of that motor at 10 o'clock, 10:05? So we have that trendings ready. And whenever we do that manual, annual rebuilds and all, so we take this information and we consider that condition of the equipment and define that annual rebuilds. And performance-wise, now we know the condition of the motor or any equipment. If it is failing, definitely we can schedule something. It's a planned maintenance. It's not like a downtime. So we know when we need to stop. And also we have some metrics percentage of plant maintenance, which is about 80 to 90% that we have a standard for.
Are you primarily using vibration, or is there anything else that you are looking at?
Yeah, so if you see the PF curve, when the failure mode, vibration gives earlier symptoms, to see what exactly happening. There are other data points as well for any motor, current, load, torque, all these things also give some information, but vibration is primary symptom for any motor. So we take that as a primary data point.
I'm hogging the mic here, but
I have a related question. You can ask another one, but
yeah.
I mean, Raju, if don't you still have to have traditional preventive maintenance to not invalidate a warranty if the manufacturer says you need to do X, Y, Z before something happens?
Yeah, so for any equipment, like, they have some, OEM has a recommendation, we have to do the preventative maintenance. Even in that preventative maintenance also, it's clearly mentioned, like, check this, check this, check this, check this. That's something we are anyways doing it. Like, it's not manual, it's completely digital. We can have a complete report and, like, dashboards ready for them whenever they want.
Okay.
I'll pass them on. Yeah.
I have this question for Malik. Amazing strategy that you laid out there. I have a question, maybe it's just a suggestion, advice on when you laid out that strategy, obviously it's a multi-year strategy, right? What's your approach to prioritize them? Like, how do you justify it to people hold the purse string, especially considering a lot of these maintenance costs is built in for decades, and then it's kind of hard for leadership sometimes to see the direct link to the bottom to revenue, right? So I just want to know what's your approach to prioritize them? How do you make the business case to justify to get funding?
I think it's a great question, and basically that's why I talked a little bit about there's two sets of strategy. There's an overarching strategy at the digital DAO level, right, which is a company strategy, and then the one that I zoomed in was for digital manufacturing part of it. So if you think about a company our size, and most companies have the same kind of functions, but the overall digital strategy and the support that you need, the investment, was a board level approval. It's because of the amount of money was required to do that. So kind of in Peter's, when he talked about people, process, technology, fourth piece is data, and then you have innovation like an R&D arm, then digital B2B, and then fulfillment. So you have manufacturing and supply chain. So all those four functions had their own digitalization, and then further prioritize as part of that, right? So each function had to do that. For us, for manufacturing, the prioritization recommendation to our leadership was to allow us to implement that enabling foundational capability, because otherwise it becomes too complicated and our management cannot decide, right? Like, where do you want me to invest money in? And we went in and said that, listen, we have legacy infrastructure that needs uplift, and we can, in some cases, like leapfrog, but that was the recommendation for prioritization. And then, because the investment was going to be approved, we were expected to have a formal value case, right? So the value case was driven by two different aspects. One's the direct link to revenue increase, right? And you have to prove that. And the way it works, the only way it works for us is that we have to make more pounds, and we have to be in sellout condition, and somebody has to actually buy them at the margin that we are reporting for that quarter. Okay? So it's a real math, and we have to show that in order for us to allow us to do this, this is what we would do for the revenue increase. The second one's the cost reduction part. That's the productivity piece that we talked about, right? So working better, more efficiently. This is the extreme case that we are not that advanced, but like in our maintenance workflow, operational workflow, can you reduce the cost, right? And then also the contractor cost. So those were the two aspects. So that's how the recommendation was made. But the further prioritization for us then comes into where do you have the most value for those categories. So our biggest sites, then the medium sites, and the small sites. So I know it's long-winded, but I think it's super critical. Anybody who wants to hop onto a digital journey, and when you ask your favorite, whoever your systems integrators are, they'll come in with their point of view, and I think it's important. They'll have an external point of view that says, okay, here's the value that we see. You'll have to revalidate by building your bottom-up model so that your leadership can say, okay, I agree, this is believable, and then you or whoever's leading it would be on hook to kind of report that against the strategy. I think a lot of the stuff that Bill talked about comes into play. It's not just the technology. I think technology is the easiest part of the transformation. It's about changing and doing things differently, and your workforce is just not programmed like that. So I would say that be careful about promising this big return. It's probably not going to happen right away.
So Peter Guilfoyle with Northwest Analytics
Hey,
had a
Peter.
question for both Malik and Bill. Sounds like both of your journeys as you undertook them required to get cross-department buy-in. And
Right.
heard it directly in Bill's, and it seemed to be there with the Dow example as well. What specifically did you do to enable that cross-department cooperation?
For us, it was a combination of showing them what is easier for them. And sometimes it was a matter of letting their customers tell them, why aren't you doing this? Because it's here. There was no one approach, except wherever we could, we tried to show them how life is better for you. And when they would not join us, we would have let them be directed to us later.
Hey, Peter, good to see you. For us, it's there's just an iteration prior to the kickoff of the digital strategy. So we have gone through this end-to-end work process view, right? So when we are making an recommendation, kind of think about scale to produce, and then demand plan to fulfill. I mean, these are like Dow end-to-end processes. So when you're talking to our, manufacturing leadership or supply chain leadership, you're able to kind of tell the story that, we are going to be able to make the product, which we need to give it to our customer, right? That CX index that I talked about. So that would get a higher priority versus something just manufacturing specific, right? So for the dollars that are available, how do you make the most impact at the company level that would contribute towards the CXI is an example. So most of our investment in starting this year is even more tighter. Like we have an end-to-end theme approach, right? So less about your functional, specific digital work versus what's really needed at that cross-functional level so that, both the leaders can articulate. And this is one example. I just used the example of supply chain and manufacturing, but like our contractor strategy would then further require sourcing, leader, right? Because we want to kind of tether that piece as well. So you can say, okay, if we have a better sourcing negotiation, then we can have this vendor management system, which would allow us to have the end-to-end visibility for the overall cost to do the business. So then all those three leaders would say, yeah, that makes sense, right? Because it's all, that visibility is needed, then that would get a higher prioritization. Hopefully that's a better example, actually. Yeah.
Excellent. A question up in front, second front row. Thanks, Gavin.
So thank you very much for these great presentations. So I guess that's a question for Bill and Malik. Bill, you made a point to mention dashboards in your presentation, and I was wondering, are these dashboards for the technicians or for management or for the supervisors? And I think, Malik, you also had in one slide showed visualization or something like that. So maybe you can talk about this a little.
Yeah, I think it's both. So for engineers, also for the operators or the technicians out in the field control room as well. So we are customizing it. Some of them could be, it's the same thing, but you render it differently based on the role that you are doing. It's only enabled because of the architecture that I was showing you allows us to do that. So we have done that. One learning that I would say in developing the dashboard is that you could have a dashboard strategy and say, okay, here's the tool that I want to use. But there's a lot of native tools that are available, especially in an ERP system, which are highly optimized, right? So I would say that you can consider that. But they're for multiple roles, and they're role-based. And we're also trying to figure out, sometimes it's too many, right? Like it gets confusing, like who's using all this stuff? So I think something to consider as you're developing that.
And for us, very similar. It is role-based, and there was a journey that we went through from initial dashboards that were provided, that were high level, they were great in the boardroom and for executives, and they meant nothing to anyone else. So it wasn't only that they're role-based on the data they're providing, the information rendering, but they're role-based on how they're designed for visualization. And that is probably the most important learning for us, because the best dashboard that's provided as a high-level visualization does not help the technician.
Correct.
Thank you.
I want to ask the audience a question. When I look at the great presentations we've seen, and I think about that word Maulik used, intuitive, and I think about the bottom-up drivers when Bill was talking about the maintenance workers, and then it drives up from them because of their enthusiasm. What causes the intuition to kick in? In other words, you might have a solution where you're still running a query and it's taking time to get the query back, or you have a macros in a spreadsheet in Excel with a lot of data, and you hit the button and then you have to make a chart or something. I mean, my personal experience is if I'm not getting the answer immediately, it's not it hasn't become an extension of my senses, and the intuition doesn't kick in. So even if I can get the answer, it's not like interactive in a way that builds greater, momentum and insight. So is anyone transitioning in their organizations or had a similar experience where something ignited that intuitive capability and you saw it fan out in your organization and you'd like to talk about that or have a question about it? The visualization tools, the analytics. Am I preaching to the converted? Yes, thank you. Go ye forth. Mike is coming.
So I would just say that we have a pretty robust data collection system.
What organization are you with again? I'm sorry.
I'm with VHS Corrugated.
Excellent. VHS. Okay.
We're an OEM for corrugators. It's a large machine. Each machine has somewhere around 120 motors on it, lots of different drive chains and control systems, and pretty complex. And we have a very robust data collection system, which any one of our techs can access. They can chart it, they can put it on plots, and you could really, it's really a powerful tool, but it's not intuitive, and people don't use it,
Yep.
right? So that connection, and that actually is a question I had for Raju again as well, that piece there, right? Handing people a bunch of squiggly lines doesn't help them necessarily. The knowledge of how you interpret and read that alarm or that data is really crucial to making this data usable. And I was wondering, Raju, do your technicians have to understand vibration analysis? Or does Litmus help you interpret that data and make actions for your team?
Yeah, that's a good question. So basically, when we send notifications, we have a ticketing system. Not necessarily every technician need to understand the data. If they don't have a knowledge about how to read the vibration and the trending of the data, and even if temperature goes high, what happens and all. So we do have a machine learning model in place. Basically, we predict the health of the component. When we send a notification, we don't tell them the temperature is high. For example, we are going for a doctor, right? So they check the temperature and you are 1 or 2. So what? What I can do with that? Am I good, bad, right? So we give some context to it, what is that 102 literally impacting, right? So if temperature is going high, if vibration is also going high, so we have a correlations in place. We have that's the health model I'm talking about. We tell them what exactly happening on that specific motor. Is it a misalignment, imbalance, or it's a crest factor is going high, there's a noise in the bearing. So we give end result to the technician. So not necessarily they have to understand the data, but with the ticketing system, they can understand what exactly happening and what they need to do.
Yeah, and I would just say that that connecting the technicians to the power of the data is really crucial, because we've talked to a lot of vendors and they show us these amazing charts and things, and I'm like, well, my technician who's been working on this machine for 20 years is not, his eyes are going to glaze over. You need to tell him what's going on and what he needs to do fix the issue, so.
Excellent. Well, it's 10 minutes to the hour. It's been a great Q&A. Any additional questions, folks? You're welcome. We have one more back here. I think after this question, I might ask the panelists to give any little summaries, but we will welcome additional questions after this if there are any. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'll jump on to the topic of contextualizing your information. I taught vibration for 5 years with Emerson, Cat 1, 2, and 3. And one of the things I would teach in the class is look at your data. It's going to give you a start, okay? A lot of times you'll see data that has bad phase information or some other concept to it that tells you maybe the machine is loose, one of the feet is loose. But now what do I do with that? Well, one of the things you can do is take a strobe light and shine it at the frequency of the turning of the shaft and then detune it slightly. And any foot that is loose on your machine will appear to your eye to be undulating up and down a little bit. It's the confirmation of the problem that the squiggly lines won't necessarily give you unless your technicians have the knowledge base to go out and do a special test with a strobe light. And so, since I've just finished up my master's in engineering at the University of Tennessee in AI, this is a part of what I think current AI actually misses, is this contextualization. We've got to capture this knowledge that the technicians have out there and bring it into the AI for vibration and the other things. Once we do that, we have a very competent value stream for our end users. I just want to make that comment that you've got to capture that stuff.
That's great. And I think about the tablet examples that Bill Olson gave of the workers having an SME remotely and they're circling, that having all that recorded and available for subsequent review and perhaps even feeding that into an AI in the future, right? That becomes a very exciting workflow as well. Any remaining questions, comments? Well, I'd like to ask the panelists if they want to make any quick takeaway statements or anything.
On the last point, you're absolutely right about contextualizing. The other thing we've done for the technician is we looked at, any better?
Yeah.
Okay. You're absolutely right about contextualizing. The other thing we've done with our work ordering systems, we've built in small training snippets that are part of the standard jobs. So they can see a video what the standard is. And that's been part of that critical gathering of information from retiring workers, so we catch the knowledge before it's lost.
Thank you. Raju?
Again, this is my first time here. So it's a lot of good questions. Everybody has a kind of know what to do, like where to go, but most of the teams, most of the people, they don't know where to start. Like data collection is kind of key for anything, that's even we can call it data is gold going forward, So whatever possible, collect it, even if you don't do analysis today, but still it's going to help one day. So that's my kind of learning in my journey.
Excellent. Thank you. And Malik?
Yeah, I would say that the topic was about analytics, but I think really the challenge is data and, what's the state of your data? Just be honest about it, as you're setting the expectations. Each one of you would have your own journey, right, to get to that. I think it's going to require some heavy lifting. If you don't have the right infrastructure, then try to fight for that, to get that infrastructure in place, the right training, the right kind of AI-related skill set and data engineering and all those is changing. So draw it out as it makes sense for your company is what I would say, and I think the answers are different for different people based on your maturity.
Fantastic. Well, I'd love to thank our panelists as well as our distinguished user presenters, and let's give everyone a round of applause. And thank you, audience, too.